Today we're going to be doing a headset troubleshooting overhaul tutorial. How to basically take your modern day threadless headset apart, service it. This is my actual personal bike, and this thing's been howling at me now for, I don't know, a couple months, popping and cracking. So I don't know exactly what's wrong, but we're gonna pull it apart. You'll get to see firsthand how to do this, and we'll see if we can figure out what's going on. Okay, this particular headset is threadless steer, Cannondale Evo. So basically what we've got here, this particular headset, you can hear it making noise there as I turn the bars. Carbon frame, it's a cartridge bearing that sets directly into the carbon shell of the frame. What I'm hoping is that we just need to pull this thing apart, clean everything up, apply a film of grease, and then it should be all good to go. Could be worse, could be some bad bearings, could be potentially maybe a malfunction frame, because I have had a couple pretty good little mishap wrecks, I guess you could say, on this bike. So yeah, it's I'm gonna pull it apart, see what we find. I'm gonna make this as simple as possible. Basically we'll need a 4mm and a 6mm Allen key, plain old feel wood waterproof grease. That's what I have. Anything feel wood makes is pretty much top notch, you can be guaranteed of that. And some paper towels or shop rag, whatever. I'm going to start off by backing off the two pinch bolts there on the stem. You want to do these kind of in sequence, same way as tightening. Loosen each one a little bit at a time. So the reason you would want to loosen those up, stagger one bolt a little at a time, is just to reduce stress that can build up there in the stem. Once that's loose, you'll remove the preload cap, and then from there the stem will just come off and the fork will drop right out. I went ahead and removed the front wheel just to make it a little bit easier, but basically just pulling all the bits and pieces here off: dust cap, compression ring, upper bearing, and then the lower bearing. This should all just basically come out pretty easy by hand. It's a little dirty, but upon wiping everything out and inspecting the upper and lower cups there that are built into the frame, everything is good. No cracks. This is the lower end of the frame, but that part ended up good, so we're basically all good there. That's the lower bearing. You can see the angles on the inner and outer parts of the bearing race. Same with the upper. That's your dirty upper bearing there. Dust cap, compression ring, and you can see where that mates right up into the top bearing. And then we've got the see the beveled edge there, goes right in the bearing, and then one spacer ring. I could have disconnected the brake, but I just kind of let it, it's all just kind of dangling there, from the frame. But basically we got everything cleaned up. All the bearings actually feel pretty good. Normally if you just spin it with your hand there and it feels crunchy or notchy or not anything other than super smooth, buttery smooth, you need to either replace them, or sometimes you can get away if it's just dry with popping off one of those seals and re-greasing it. We can get into that another time, but this is a basic quickie general maintenance. But both these bearings feel pretty much about like new, so we're just gonna clean it all off. We're just gonna grease it up and put it back together. I've cleaned everything up and everything actually looks pretty good. I think our main problem was just we had a dirty bearing to frame interface. But another thing that's real critical you want to check periodically, especially if you've had any kind of crashes, is to check these carbon steer tubes. Make sure there's no cracks in any of this area here. You want to be pulling a George Hincapie and having your fork break off right there. But this one, it definitely has, you know, a few witness marks where the, you know, the compression ring is bit into it a little bit, but you know, I don't see anything worth you know, replacing the fork or anything like that. So we're just gonna, you know, you kind of see it right there, a little bit of a groove, but nothing major. What we got inside of here is our little compression plug. It's basically what clamps it all together. A little bit of a sometimes a confusion over the purpose of this. I'm going to go ahead and just pull it out just so everybody can see what the actual purpose of this part is. So basically, to remove the compression plug, there's a small screw there in the center. Sometimes it's either a 4 or 5 millimeter screw, and if you back that out, the compression plug will just come right out. Here I'm taking the screw all the way apart where you can kind of see how everything fits together. You got the bottom piece and the top piece, and when they compress together, it will expand the whole lower system there, which basically is what holds it in the fork. There's a screw that sets in that pulls that bottom base plate up that compresses it all together there. As far as to reassemble the headset, we got the two bearings. I'm going to put the lower bearing in first. You got the angular part on the inner bearing that will face towards the bottom, go down on the fork. And the angular outer edge goes up into the frame, and it's kind of the same thing with the upper bearing, which I have here. Always want to grease those up, and you know, the angled part goes down. As far as the outer bearing part that's angled, that goes towards in the frame, and then there should be an angled section in the inner bearing that's going to be facing out, which that's where your compression ring goes up into. So we'll basically slide the fork up in there. That's the compression ring there. Skinny end towards the bottom with the angle that meshes right up into the bearing. Then your dust cap will go on top of that. In my case, I have one 5 millimeter spacer. Sometimes you may have more, sometimes you may have none, but a little film of grease, make sure that part has a film of grease on it. Slide the stem on there, and so next step is going to be to kind of loosely put the top cap onto the compression plug just to kind of hold it all together, and I'll slip it into the steer tube with the fork there. Just a little bolt and gauge, slip it in there, and then at this point you can tighten the compression plug to fix it in place. And then once that's tight, we have the next bigger size. I think it's a 5 millimeter that tightens this top compression cap. And really you just want to snug that down to the point of there's no play in the bearings, but it moves nice and freely. Typically you can feel, if you can spin that little spacer, then it's too loose, but good there. I put the wheel back in, and we're just lining it up. On these smaller 4 millimeter bolts, some of them are titanium even, but it's a good idea to use a little torque wrench. This particular torque wrench is 5 Newton meters, so lock that down, and then we're good to go at that point. That's much better. It feels pretty smooth, much improved. But yeah, that's it for today. I'm going to see more things like this. Might consider hitting that subscribe button. We'll be posting up more how-to tips and tricks, whatnot, very soon. Thanks for watching.